What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MyMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. Also, gay, member of GALICA, the LGBT Film Critics Association. And this is my review of Chasing Amy, which is a film nerd documentary, is the best way to describe it. Because I think there isn't really a Venn diagram here. There's just kind of like film nerds and then LGBT film nerds who would be interested in this specifically. But I just don't see how somebody who isn't into film, that you get them into Chasing Amy. There might be some people maybe who are not really heavily into film, but part of the LGBT crowd who have heard the kerfuffle about it, but then you would sort of be into film. So I think you kind of have to be into film to kind of get this. Anyway, it was presented for my consideration, and the screener didn't have audio description, so I did the best as what I could. I actually own Chasing Amy on Criterion DVD. It does not have audio description, but I just thought I'd point that out. So, it's not a film that I've watched more than once. I got it with the Criterion when I was clout chasing my DVD collection by trying to snap up Criterion movies when they were on sale. And that was when I watched it, and since then I barely remember it. I think I got that almost 25 years ago. So this film is interesting in so many aspects. We have a director who thought they were a lesbian at one point, and after sort of initially watching Chasing Amy, I actually thought they were really into Ben Affleck. There's a little part of maybe like a quasi like stand-up special slash TED Talk slash I'm here to tell you my life story type of thing, where the director goes into a moment in time where they just really wanted to watch everything Ben Affleck, and they went through their parents' collection of movies and found that there was this movie that had Ben Affleck on the box, and they hadn't gotten a chance to see it yet. So pops in Chasing Amy. Life changed forever. Then starts realizing, oh, am I a lesbian? And now the director is a transgender male, and it explores even that through the lens of how he's been in a relationship with his girlfriend, and she originally identified as a lesbian and is now dating a transgender male, and is, there's this question of, well, where does that make your sexuality, your fluidity? I think what's really interesting in all of this is a documentary about a film whose backlash has been that the whole premise of Chasing Amy is it's a straight dude who pines after a lesbian and eventually gets the lesbian. So, and that sort of has plagued the, I would say the lesbian community, with the whole, oh, you're not really gay, you just haven't had good dick yet. No, they don't want it. That's their thing. If maybe that was the case, then I'm sure they would identify as bisexual. I think in 2024, there's so many different labels for things that if somebody's labeling themselves as lesbian or gay, then they know that that's what they are. Because they could easily just say bisexual is a choice that's in there. They could say they're pansexual. There's so many different things that they can identify as. So nowadays, it feels like we're at a place where you can correctly find the word that describes you. But in the 90s, that wasn't really the case. And I've kind of talked about this too through my own, even though I'm not a lesbian, surprise. I talked about this through some of my own reviews in June when I did some movies with Pride, and I touched on some movies from back in the 90s that had audio description now, like The Birdcage and To Wong Fu. Namely, The Birdcage was like one of those films for me that really just put a lot of things in order for me, like a lot of ducks in rows for me, because I was growing up in the Midwest, in a small town in the Midwest, and we did not get what you would call queer cinema. We got a couple, the mainstream shows. So I got representation through like Ellen and Will and Grace. And then when a movie was big, like The Birdcage or To Wong Fu, that's when I got those. I did not get Priscilla, Queen of the Desert near me at the time. So, I didn't get films that maybe had a little bit more truthful, honest representation of queerness in the 90s, made by queer filmmakers, starring queer actors, which is what, Gen Alpha and Gen Z have been able to get, is this really authentic sort of storytelling, and to hold Chasing Amy to that light and to be mad at it instead of saying, well, they made a movie with a central character that's a lesbian, and in the 90s, in many ways, that was still progressive. In many ways, to even release the film, to get this a theatrical release, to get it into theaters, to get butts and seats for this sort of a film, was in many ways progressive, because Chasing Amy never came to me either. So wherever it went, if it could break through anywhere, then it can find people who like the filmmaker here, who are trying to figure out their own stuff. And I think nowadays it's easy to think about the level of access that we have to information, and to being able to find quick answers and support and gay straight alliances. And in certain areas of the country, people are just way more accepting. Although, we are past election day, so who knows anymore. But kind of feel disenfranchised from a country, but it's still more prevalent, and there's better representation now, because there was representation earlier, because there was incremental representation. I've mentioned before, I go back to even just the tiny scene. There's a little throwaway scene in Breakfast at Tiffany's where two dudes enter the same bathroom, and I'm like, man, for its time period, that's really subversive. It's not what the film is about, but you put that shit in the background, and it's just there for people who catch it. It's just there to throw you a little bone to start with, to see, like, what can we get away with. Hitchcock was great at, like, pushing the boundaries of the Hays Code, and really just coming through and being like, well, what can I get away with? I don't know. I've never shown a flushing toilet on screen before. Well, I figured out a way around that one, So whenever somebody kind of subverted the stigma around something back in the early days, it was always kind of fascinating to see things like that happen. But in the 90s, we were sort of starting to get queer cinema, but it was for, like, major cities. Like, if you grew up in New York, LA, Chicago, like, you were in San Francisco, you know what I'm saying? Like, you were getting these movies, the ones that were actually, like, queer representation, and that maybe still, like, hold up to some extent today. But even with that, you were getting films with straight actors in them, that were being handed to you, that were just aimed at LGBTQ audiences. So they just had more characters in them, and were a little bit less afraid of going places. So Chasing Amy was just made by a straight white man, and I think that's what hid the light on it. Kevin has said that this is based on a story. He kind of talks about that a little bit, based on like a real aspect of his life. Um, Whether how much that's true, whether that affects. I mean, a lot of filmmakers do put their own personal stuff into film, so that wouldn't surprise me, especially in his early days of filmmaking when he's still writing scripts that mean something to him. This is a guy that they came up with a name for his for the Kevin Smith universe. Um, the View Askew universe or whatever. So, I mean, they all take place in the same state. And, clearly had a rhythm about him in the 90s. It's interesting to hear him say that like he's like, Mallrats made my career, Chasing Amy killed my career, something like that. And I'm like, no, it didn't. Dogma, you pissed off way more people. And then you made Jersey Girl. Like, I think somebody just needs to sit down with Kevin Smith and just really break down his career for him. Because I don't think Chasing Amy was the film that or Mallrats, for example. I don't think either one of those films, they helped, if anything, build the cult around him at the time. And then Dogma was so just scandalous for its time that you were either a fan or you stood outside with signs protesting the film. I mean, like, it's just then you have Smith talking about the Harvey Weinstein scandal and how that affected the way he even looks back on Chasing Amy. Like, throw out the LGBT stuff. He realizes what this means. He realizes where he was. He has put the timeline together. He has put it with Rose McGowan's claim on Harvey Weinstein, and he knows exactly that Harvey was promoting Chasing Amy at this time. And it has really soured the film for him, even if you kind of cut out the hate from or the odd love from LGBT. If you take all that out, if you take out the queer element in this documentary, there's a story there that we kind of explore a little bit, which is Kevin Smith and the tainted quality. He's like, I can't even take his name off the film. I don't own the film. And so to put his name on it, and made me think that in and of that, there's a whole like slew of filmmakers who have these people who've worked on their films, and it's like, I wonder how much they all feel like Kevin Smith, like how, like, that's such an interesting thing to explore, to do. That's, hello documentarians, why don't you explore the Weinstein effect of all the directors who have that name permanently attached to their film, and what does that mean for them? Because clearly for Kevin, he's not good with it. I think Kevin Smith in general is somebody who's probably like a good guy who always helps people out and has their back, fights for good causes. I don't know. I always get sort of like a chill vibe from him. I don't think he's angry about the wrong things. So when he says that it makes him uncomfortable, I believe it. So I'm glad that was in there, because it's something that we've kind of dodged and avoided, and we haven't really talked about. I mean, we make a movie about She Said, but I think the interesting thing is, if we're going to make film nerd movies, let's make one that explores what is it like to have his name as the producer. What was it like? What is it like to reflect on that time period when he was going around with you campaigning, and now the stuff that was happening and around that, how does that change your worldview of your own film? So just interesting. It's an interesting thing that he opened up the door for that I appreciated. But really, this is all about one person's reflective journey through this film and how they have sort of changed and evolved as a person, from a woman who thinks Ben Affleck is just so cute. So cute. It's just like so cute. um to oh my god, maybe I'm a lesbian. I'm having these feelings. I'm entering junior high. I'm having feelings to later on in life, being like, I don't know if I don't know if this is right, if this is right for me, and then trying to explore what that meant, and then continuing to go forward on their journey. So for a film that has been hammered for its odd exploration of queerness, you know, taking somebody who maybe identifies as a lesbian and then has sex with a man, and it's like, is that is there finality to it? Is there necessarily a defining? It's not the best way to do it, but it is a juxtaposition where you see a film that's heavily criticized for having that, but is also beloved by some for that, for having this sort of queerness about it, where you can have a fluidity, and you're not. It's not something, you know, you can continue to explore who you are. I think especially it's easier when you're an adult and you sort of have figured it all out. But I think, you know, the director talks about it from a perspective of being youth, you know, and in that period, you're trying to figure shit out. You know, I was still mystified by boobs, but also at the same time, clearly nothing else. So I needed other things to be sort of explained to me, because there was stuff I was feeling. And I don't know if cinema is always the best way and the best representation of exploring things, but eventually age comes with that and experience comes with that, and you move away from things. And now our director's in a completely different place than when they first started, when they were first obsessed with Ben Affleck, you know. And Chasing Amy is a part of that. And I think when we're talking about all of our journeys, for people, it's going to be completely different. I mean, for people who came out of different generations, everybody had different experiences. There are people who came out of the AIDS crisis, and so that's a huge part of their story. There are people who came out before that who, you know, their coming out story is representational of something else. So, and then nowadays it's just like, whatever. I mean, it's a lot easier. The media is everywhere. There are children's programs with characters whose sexual orientation is not traditional, not what, you know, across the spectrum. You have a little bit more of that in shows like Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous. So, I mean, it's easy for me to point that out because I watched that show. I don't know how many other shows do that, but there's one. So, yeah, this was an interesting thought, and it's a nice journey. I had a friend who worked on this, and I was always sort of intrigued by this. He worked on shooting Clerks and then Chasing Amy, and just sort of intrigued. I kind of wanted to see something he actually worked on, and there we go. I would hope this picks up audio description. Kevin Smith happens to be one of those filmmakers who, there's sort of this, there's an interview that was passed around to me a while back where he talks about finding one of his movies like on streaming or something, and I guess the audio description was actually accidentally turned on, and he played it and he heard the track and he was like, what is this? Who are these people talking during the movie? And so he finally got to explore what audio description was, and his experience with it was pleasant once he realized what it was and why it is that it needs to be there. It's interesting to see filmmakers like that, which is so weird that his latest film doesn't have audio description, and films that are tangentially connected to him like this don't have audio description. It's like, well, apparently you weren't affected that much by it. Apparently this is not that big of a deal to you, Kevin. But you know, it would be nice. I mean, this has been around from festival to festival, so I don't understand it. But um, it's a lot of talking. I mean, I kind of I grade documentaries differently anyway, based on the level of audio description, because it's a lot of talking. And God, there's some documentaries that you get almost no audio description in because people don't shut up. It's just talking head after talking head after talking head after talking head. And I didn't hear because I didn't have audio description. I didn't know everybody who talked. I didn't know why they were important to talk. I was like, is that the dude from Film Threat? I think he's in here. I think one of like the people to give like color commentary on the history of this film is the guy who's the critic for Film Threat. But um and I recognize obviously some of the famous actors and their voices, like Kevin and Joey and Ben and Jason. But aside from that, yeah, there are people who are popping in and out with thoughts. I was like, I don't know who you are, and I don't know why your opinion matters. And that's what audio description closes in the gap, because in a documentary you get to go boop, put the name and the why on text on the screen. But for us, we're like, I don't know, somebody doesn't like it. Somebody's upset. I don't know. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you a hug, a virtual hug, but you know. So I think you should see Chasing Amy. I think it's in theaters still now. It's not going to have that dramatic of a theatrical release. I mean, Chasing Amy didn't have that that big of a theatrical release, but it was pretty big for a film like of its ilk. So if you get a chance, I think you should check it out, especially if you're a film nerd. I think this is the kind of thing, and it's interesting to see the LGBT community reaction to this, the queer community, to see, a trans filmmaker making a documentary about how Chasing Amy, for good or for bad, really did have an impact on their path in life. So, as far as I can tell, I don't, there's not really a reason to hate this documentary. You can still have feelings about Chasing Amy. I'm not going to like invalidate your feelings on Chasing Amy if you still want to be somebody who that film doesn't pass your test, doesn't pass the muster. But I'm going to give Chasing Amy A minus. This is the kind of thing that if Hollywood, I've kind of thrown them the accusation that a lot of what they do is content creation anymore, in terms of all of the documentaries that we get that are just like a famous person documentary, all these celebrities that are getting these documentaries from not just actors, but sports and musicians and stuff like that. This would be a fun thing to start doing, analyzing films more and finding a perspective and doing these film nerd things. I think this is great. Like, let's do more of this. And I mean, film nerds are the ones that are likely to turn on your service. So there should be a little bit more aimed at that. I was really disappointed that Netflix started something with noir and then went nowhere with it. So they were like, oh, we got 6 episodes of the show that's going to really dive heavily into film. Great. And like the movies that made us or whatever, it's like they haven't done any new episodes of that. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. You guys were making good content and about movies, and so make more stuff like this. Find filmmakers who have been affected by a film and give them the money, because you're going to run out of celebrities. You're going to start making celebrity documentaries about people that we don't care about. Just, I don't know, the Kid Rock story. I just not going to watch that, Anyway, thanks for watching. Please click like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the other side.